Well, it's really good to be back here together with all of you who are joining us for this journey in church planting, discipleship, missional movements. And today I've got a friend of mine, actually. That's Fraser Catton, all the way down in Victoria. And Fraser, you've done something to your hand. Can you show us what you did to your hand? Now that looks pretty sore. How on earth did you do that?
Look, I'd love to say it's a big story of bravery and gallantry, but our kids asked us to go roller skating with them. So we did. And about 5 minutes towards the end of the session, everyone had gotten through unscathed. And I stopped a bit quickly and fell backwards and put my left arm down to brace the fall. And my arm decided to go straight through my wrist. So
that's got to hurt, Fraser.
Anyhow, a trip to the hospital and 2 operations, and we are back together thanks to some amazing surgeons. So all good. Just got to recover now.
So you hit the concrete a bit too fast at the wrong angle, and that's the result.
Yeah, perfect angles all around.
It reminds me, Fraser, because we actually grew up in a concrete jungle, quite a long way from here in Hong Kong. Do you have any scars from growing up in Hong Kong or great memories?
Look, a lot of good memories. I just remember, with everyone living in an apartment building, it's pretty cool because your community is right there with you. In Australia where we live now, it's in suburbia. Everyone's got at least they're a bit more spread out. So community is really different. But I remember back then, everyone would eat together, you'd play together, you would do, your faith community was together. It was a really neat experience, kind of a, semi-commune style.
But in a good way.
Yeah, but in a good way. It was fun. I did get my good share of scrapes and bruises and scars from concrete playing, but hey, it was worth it. It was fun over there.
Yeah, and certainly looking at what's happening in Hong Kong at the moment with the protests and the Chinese control, my prayer is not necessarily that they get the freedom that they want, which of course we'd all love to have, don't get me wrong, but in the midst of this, it would really ask them to question the materialism that both of us know is very rampant there, I guess I could say, and that they could really lead them to God. So the other thing, Fraser, it's been really amazing. We grew up in Hong Kong, our parents were there. And then after a number of years to come back and to actually be working together, it's almost a bit surreal.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, when we were growing up, I think my my brother was probably more in your circles than I was, being a few years older than me. But I remember just looking up for you guys, both figuratively and literally, and having just a really cool support network. So it's a pleasure to work with you and just see what God's done in the meantime.
Yeah. So Fraser, we're really interested to hear about your role, your ministry, your vision down in Victoria. So just give us a snapshot. What's your ministry involved in the Victorian Conference?
Sure. So I am a local church pastor. This is year 9, I believe, down here. I've worked in some big churches, small churches, country churches. At the moment, I'm in a suburban church, and loving being a part of local church. It's the local church is really, it's where things happen. It's where the rubber meets the road in terms of Jesus community reaching the world, and so there's just so much potential in the local church. Other part of my role is I work for the Victorian Conference as a project manager for our evangelistic initiative. So this is a 5-year strategy that we've got, and we are in year 3, so 2 more years after this year. And that's involved a number of things: discipleship training, public evangelism events, local community programs run by multi-churches, so there's collaboration there as well, and digital as well. So it's been it's an interesting place to be in.
So you're at the heart of Harvest Victoria, I believe it's called. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So what we want to know is, you're in the machine room, shall I say, in the engine room, making sure it all works. And I guess the big question, Fraser, that we want to know is it working from your perspective? And okay, we're not going to send this to your president down there, so we're going to keep it really under wraps here. But tell us, what's your reflections on the ideas that people have about evangelism right at the moment?
Yeah, it's, I guess as long as I've been in ministry, this has been a, excuse me, it's been a question, why do we still do public evangelism? Does it work? Was it more suited for the 50s, 60s, 70s, and not so much now?
I mean, would your neighbors, would they come to an evangelistic series? That's the question that comes into my mind. Or if you're in an office, would your work colleagues come?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, over the past 18 months, we've had opportunity to try this 2 different ways, in person and digitally. And what we found with the in-person series, we had 4 sessions, 4 locations around Melbourne, running 4 sessions per week at each location. And these were pretty well spaced out across Melbourne. What we found was that people did bring a friend. So the majority of people who attended were brought by an existing believer.
So not from letterboxing or advertising. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that still had its benefits, but over half of the people who attended were brought by somebody else. So yes, it does work, but, and I think this is the crucial element that you've got to realize, it doesn't work as well if there's no personal connection at the beginning. So if I have a friend who I've been praying for and who I really appreciate and I really want them to understand who Jesus is and get to know him, then for me to make that invitation to come and join me at this meeting, that is much more effective than, spending $200,000 on TV ads and those people who come in and the journey that they take. So, and this is publicly known, this isn't new information, but if there's already an existing relationship where I am investing and intentionally praying for and doing life with you, then we've got that connection. And if I invite you to something, well then, hey, you're more likely to accept that invitation, but also you're accepting it because you value me and you accept me. And so you're coming into this space where you can hear about Jesus and the truth that we have as Adventists from the Bible. You can hear that within the safety of our relationship, as opposed to having no support, no connection, and just hearing it cold.
So I guess the question that comes to mind is and I've really been wrestling with it myself, should we just throw out TV evangelism and letterboxing completely? Should we just print flyers and say to everybody, just bring your friends, bring the cost down to effectively, an airfare for a speaker, maybe, the hire of the hall and, the refreshments? Should we minimize it to that kind of extent? Or is the letterboxing good for building morale and teamwork? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that there's definitely an element to that. I mean, we had about 1.5 million letterboxing handouts that we had, which church members put out. So, I mean, they jumped on board with this wholeheartedly. So there is definitely a benefit to engaging them in the process, because you feel like, hey, I'm doing something. I'm playing my role. I may not be able to preach on street corners. I may not be able to, do the best Bible study, but I can put this in someone's letterbox. And I don't think we can discount the value of that. Are there other ways to engage them? Yeah, possibly. And maybe we need to explore them to allow them to have that level of buy-in and ownership in the process that may be more cost effective. But I think there's there's certainly, I think there's a place for the big events with the big advertising, and because it gets word out like nothing else. We, based on what we did in 2019 for the Revelation Today series, we had Eric Flickinger and John Bradshaw come and share. We did some pretty significant advertising, and that reached about 1.5 to 2 million people.
That's incredible.
At least 2 or 3 times. So we heard from people who saw it on TV, saw it on Facebook, and then got something in their letterbox. And what's interesting is usually they come to a meeting, they sit down, they start chatting, and I heard this a number of times. And they're chatting, and the person next to them saying, "Oh, I put that in your letterbox. I'm so glad you could make it."
Really?
So I think there is value to use the money that God's given us wisely every now and then to do something big, because your reach is just phenomenal. And yeah, I think that builds, for want of a better word, just brand awareness. And hey, this is out there. But in terms of getting best bang for your buck, I think there's value in exploring other options in terms of, let's just really focus on friends, inviting friends, and tailor it for that personal relational aspect and that feel, and allow conversation maybe during the program, just to really capitalize on the relationship that is already there because the friends brought the friends.
So you said you've been able to compare the in-person events, and I think that was that 2018, 2019? And
May, June 2019.
2019. And then you've been able to compare it more recently with an online digital version. So give us the comparison.
Yeah. Is it? Well, first of all, it's not apples and apples, which makes it interesting. And I guess the in-person campaign was Victoria, Melbourne and regional Melbourne based. Digital one was national.
And New Zealand as well.
And New Zealand, yeah, absolutely. And it even ended up in some of the islands. So the benefit of in-person is you can track figures a lot easier than you can digitally. It's really hard to do that follow-up and to see the numbers.
Personal touch.
In terms of attendance, yeah. So in terms of what was more effective, I think we're still probably a bit too early on in the digital to say what impact it's actually had. But they're both ones that we can't throw out either, I guess is probably what I'd end up saying.
Use both.
There is space for both. And I think this really just has clarified for me the value in, we can't just stick to one thing. We need to be entrepreneurial in how we look at evangelism and how we look at church, how we make our efforts to grow God's kingdom, because community is changing, people are changing, society is always changing. And if we don't adapt our methods with that,
we're not like Nokia or something like that.
Yeah, we're going to be the Blockbuster of Christianity.
Yes.
And we have really good people within our church. We have incredibly talented thinking individuals who are creative and coming up with different ways of doing things. And I would just love to see them. And if you're listening, this is for you. I would love to see you, don't let go of the vision God's given you. Explore it, find people who can support you with that, and dig into it and lean into it, because God wants to use that for his kingdom and to make it grow. And so I would just really love to see people, explore these things and see what comes up.
Yeah, love your heart, Fraser. And you're a person that I have really, grown as we have teamed up in terms of your willingness to explore ideas, to evaluate them, but to support and encourage them has been really brilliant. So that's your project management role. You're also a local church pastor. Share with me some of the ideas in that kind of space. What you're thinking about, what's on your mind, and what's your evaluation of some of the future for the local church?
Yeah. Local church is, Bill Hybel said this, and despite, his record, I think the value of what he said still stands. The local church is the hope of the world.
Mm.
I couldn't agree more with that. What I've seen, though, is that our local church has become, I feel in some ways, we've kind of lost our focus. And maybe let me share with you what's happened during COVID to perhaps explain what I mean by that. Talking to other church leaders, one of the comments I've heard over and over again over the last 4 or 5 months is our leaders, our people have loved doing things online because it's given them a break.
Mm. They've got their Sabbath back.
Yes, exactly. That's what they're saying. I'm enjoying Sabbath again. And that doesn't mean they didn't enjoy it before, but it's taken on the true restful meaning of it. And it's allowed them to embrace, I think, more fully what the Bible, what Jesus had in store for the Sabbath, rather than what we've made it. And
so do you feel that as leaders, as culture, we've kind of laid a heavy burden on people? The verse that comes to mind, and I know it's a misapplication of the verse, is Acts chapter 15, where Peter says, we've been carrying this burden. Have our church programs been burdening people in a way that's been just too heavy for them?
Look, that's the question I'm asking, because we've had such a focus on ensuring that our programs are good week in, week out. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love a well-run, well-put-together program that allows people to experience and reflect and grow. But it takes a lot of work to do that, especially if you're a small church, especially if you're a large church. There's no one who's kind of immune from that. And the expectation that we have on what we get at church, which is that 2.5 hour period on Sabbath morning, the expectation from that is that we get filled, we get rejuvenated, we get educated, we get taught, we get discipled. All of this happens in such a short period. So there's a fair bit of expectation to fill it with all of those requirements. And what I've noticed is our leaders are burnt out.
So again, come back to that term. You said church is 2.5 hours on a Sabbath morning, but just evaluate that idea for me. According to your reflections, is that church? Is that the biblical ecclesiology? Is a technical word? Is that really church?
Yeah, absolutely not. No, and I think we all know that, but our everyday language suggests otherwise. What are you doing on Sabbath? I'm going to church. Yeah. Oh, where are you going to drop those food parcels at? I'm going to drop them off at church. We've become so used to identifying the building with church that we've lost the biblical idea that church is this called out body of people who represent Jesus wherever they are and whatever they're doing. And so, I think we've lost that vision, and if we can recapture that, it might change how things look. But man, I think we can come back to being that group of people who represent Christ wherever we are and share him whatever we're doing.
So what's your ideas? How are you evaluating these ideas, the ideas you've got, in terms of you want to lighten the load? So you're lowering the bar for church, shall I say? But at the same time, you want to increase the missional focus. How would you do that with Oasis? What's your ideas? What's your thoughts on that?
Look, and these are early thoughts, but my line of thinking is this: our leaders are busy, our people are busy, everyone's busy. And at the moment, the free time that they have for growing God's kingdom is being placed into preparing for a Sabbath service. What if we freed up that time and allowed them, instead of preparing for a program, we allowed them to put that time into preparing a person for a relationship with Jesus? So instead of focusing on programming, they're focusing on discipling. In essence, that's really it. And now if you follow that rabbit down the hole, there's a whole bunch of things that probably need to shift to allow that to happen. We need to rethink of church. We need to rethink of discipleship. We need to rethink of my role in God's kingdom. So it does require some unlearning and relearning. But I just wonder, if our community, our church community, could have the tools and the freedom to actually pursue making disciples in their community and their relationships, instead of having to run programs, what impact would that have, first of all, on their relationship with God, on their passion for mission, but also on the growth of God's kingdom?
No, I love it. The other thing, Fraser, as well, is that not only we're looking at that freeing process, but you've also mentioned in the discussions we've had about there's a need for discipleship. You used that word just now. So lowering the bar for church programming, if I could put it that way, but raising the bar for discipleship. So, you're heavily involved in evangelism. You're heavily involved in leading people to baptism, but the journey from that point on. So what would that look like? Your perspective, the journey of discipleship beyond the information about the Adventist worldview and baptism, if I could put it in really basic, crude terms.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things which I guess, and I'll make an admission here, as a follower of Jesus, I made the commitment to him and did my studies to get baptized when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and got involved in a church plant and grew in my understanding of what it meant to be a part of a church community. But I have, I guess I'm coming to a better understanding now of what it means to follow Jesus with the totality of your life. And I guess part of that is understanding and defining what a gospel-centered living looks like. Because, whether you've been a Christian for 30 years or 3 years or 3 months, I think there's still this call on us to work out, hey, God, what is it that you're calling me to do? How do you want me to live this new faith out in every aspect of my life? And so, I've just been exploring over the last probably 2 years with a few friends. What does this look like? What are the tools needed to help shape a gospel-centered calling on your life? And something that gives you clarity about this is where God's got me now, and this is what he wants me to do. So one of the things I've discovered that's been really helpful is a book called by Will Mancini called Life Unique. And it's essentially just looking at, as it says, dreaming the life that God dreamed for you. Now, this kind of stuff you've probably heard of before and seen before, but what makes this one different is it's very much gospel-centered. It's about having Jesus at the core of your life, and based on your surrender to him, how can your life best be used for his glory, given the talents, the skills, the abilities, the experiences that you've gone through, that you have. And it actually gives you not just the tools to figure that out, but also it gives you the strategy to execute that on a daily, weekly, yearly basis. And so I'm really excited to explore that, and just this idea of really helping someone step through and into the life that God's called them as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus.
No, that sounds amazing. And so that's not just 2.5 hours on Sabbath morning. From what you're saying, the life Jesus has planned for you is much bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if we think that it's just 2.5 hours that we're called to be an Adventist and a Christian for, then I think we need to re-understand Jesus' life. You go back and look at it. He wasn't here just for. He didn't clock off, and that shows what true surrender and true commitment is actually like. It's all I am, all I have, all I do is for you, and understanding how you can do that more effectively each and every day is, it's exciting.
So paint a picture for me, Fraser. So imagine I'm a business student. I'm 22, 23 years old, and I'm studying business at QUT. So I'm not sure if that was you, but hopefully it's pretty close, being from Brisbane. But what would that look like? What would the life that Jesus has planned for me look like if I'm that business student? I'm kind of interested in mission, but I've got other interests. I've got interest in relationships and traveling overseas. What would life with Jesus look like?
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm going to maybe channel my younger self to answer that question, because I was in that spot, and it was as I look back on that era of my life, it was really energizing to realize that God might have a plan for me. And at that point, ministry was not on the radar. So you don't have to enter full-time ministry to follow God's calling at all. In fact, in some ways, you may be more effective if you don't. Instead, it's about living each day with Him and realizing that no matter, He has given you skills and abilities and passions for something. And if you can understand what they are, and you can find a place that allows you to fulfill those things, and it doesn't have to be how can I say this? You can go through that process with absolute courage and boldness, because God's in control. He's the one who gave you these things. He will guide you to the place where He wants you to be. And this isn't rainbows and unicorns kind of stuff. It's just trusting that He has a plan. And that as you follow Him and surrender those decision points to Him, say, God, hey, I'm in this point. I know there's two options here. Both of them can be good. I just want to follow the plan that You've got for me and the will that You have for my life. Then, hey, you make that call and you go for it, surrendering everything you have to Him. So it looks like in my relationships, I'm unashamed of Christ, and I have the tools and the knowledge to be able to share Him effectively. In my workplace, it means I do that with integrity. I represent Him no matter what I'm doing. It can still be something that brings Him glory through my actions, through my behavior, and I can leverage what I'm in for His kingdom. In relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, marriage, similarly, same thing. I think in all these aspects of your life, it doesn't mean you need to let go of them or walk away from them. It just means coming to Him at each step and saying, God, I'm in this for You. You're in this with me. What's my next step here? We're not there to step out in faith.
Brilliant. It's really amazing, Fraser. So obviously Will Mancini, I think got the name right there, and he's written the book Life Unique. He's focused on the gospel, evangelical writer. As we just wrap up here today, for those of people who've joined us, how would you say the Adventist worldview fits into that? How would you say that, the concept of the everlasting gospel or the Adventist message, do we have legs to stand on as Adventist young people, shall I say? Is it an important part to be Adventist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what what the evangelical kind of takes it to here, the Adventist just raises that bar again, because it says that the calling that you have is not just to share the gospel with the world, to tell them that they have a Jesus who loves them, who died for them, who represents a God who is amazing. But it gives us a time frame, and it gives us a sense of urgency, but also I think a greater sense of authority in what we're called to do, because you look around, time's running out. I firmly believe, and so the call for you and me, and you watching, to live out that gospel-centered life that God's called us to is even greater now than it was yesterday. And so I think as our Adventist view just really puts a magnifying glass on that and says, hey, this is bold, this is all caps, this is really important, this matters more than anything else. So yeah, Sven, absolutely. It just really, really magnifies it.
Well, thank you so much, Fraser. It's been absolutely brilliant talking with you. I guess really, if I could put it this way, talking heart to heart as missional leaders. You're down in Melbourne, I'm up here in Newcastle, but I guess the resonance in terms of for mission, for evangelism, for discipleship is really amazing. And I guess what some people may not be aware who joined us today is that there was a chance that you may not have been able to do this interview at this time because you were in hospital, Knox Private Hospital, because of the hand. So it's a real blessing that you've been able to join us, and we're really praying for you. But to know that you were willing to get up, even with all of the Panadol and all of that stuff, to join us is incredible. And I was just wondering if you would, as we finish, would be able to pray for any young person, anybody, but in particular, young person who, they're at university or they've graduated, they're wondering if Jesus has a life in plan for them, but pray for them that God may lead them, the Holy Spirit may lead them, and they may discover that incredible mission that He has planned for them.
Okay, I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you are so good, and your plans, the future, while what we see may not be clear, to you it is. And we just thank you that you're in control. Father, I want to pray for each person that is listening to this, as they are perhaps contemplating their tomorrows and what that may look like. They may have concerns about the church, about how things operate, about the way things are done. Any number of things, Lord. You know them. And I just pray that you will inspire them, that you will show them that Jesus and the message that he has for them and for this world is greater than all of those things. It surpasses all of them. And Father, that you will breathe into them creativity, optimism, enthusiasm. Father, these are the people who are going to shape your kingdom in the future. They're going to shape what church looks like. And as Joel prophesied, you will give them dreams and visions, and they will have these burning passions within them to look at new ways of sharing you with others. And so my prayer is that you will strengthen them, you will encourage them. And Father, if they are there and they are thinking, hey, I'd love to try this or I'd love to do that, Lord, may your Spirit just encourage them in that process. Give them the boldness to have a crack, have a go, and put people around them to support them and encourage them in that process as well. Lord, I want to thank you that church is a group of people who love you, who serve you, who celebrate you, and who want to share you with others. And so as we keep that in mind, may we be that group of people, and may we have an amazing impact for your glory and for your kingdom, because you are good, and Jesus, you're coming back soon. And we just pray these things in your most amazing name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Fraser. And I'm really glad you could join us. And we look forward to the next stage, having you back on and hearing more of your journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben.